Hi everyone, I'm Lisa and welcome to Lisa's Stamp Studio. I've got a fun cut for you today on a card that I'm going to teach you. Looks difficult. With just a few steps, I think you can master it at home. Here it is. Isn't it stunning? And look at the 3-dimension on this card. We're using, of course, the brand new glitter dots to accent all those pretty colors. I'm really excited to show you how to put it together. Remember, you can find all the cutting dimensions for today's project over on my blog. Go ahead and click on the I, which is the information button at the top of the screen here if you're viewing from YouTube. It'll take you right to my blog where you'll find all the cutting dimensions and still photographs for today's project. And while you're there, check out my online classes tab for studio stamps in the mail. The ordering period is now through July 16th. You're not going to want to miss enjoying a way to stamp with me from home. Let's get over to the stamp table and let's get started. Now you can get a really good look at this card and you can see the dimension. So the panel here on the front is actually raised using foam adhesive strips. And then of course I kept all the embellishments up here to the top of the corner. You're going to find all the cutting dimensions for today's project over on my blog. So make sure you click that I button here at the top of the page. That's going to direct you right to the blog post for this card. Give you all the pictures there as well. Cut my cardstock, I've got my base, and then I have an additional piece of Whisper White cardstock, and you can see I cut it the exact same size as the top layer of my card. We're going to use the paper trimmer. I'm going to bring that in, and we're actually going to cut on an angle. Now, if you prefer to make a template on scratch paper or scrap cardstock first, that's fine. I'll be honest with you, I just kind of wung it. And no two of my cards are going to be cut exactly the same, and I'm really okay with that. So knowing that I want it to be shallower at the top and wider at the bottom, I'm actually going to gauge just how narrow I want it to be, keeping in mind that this strip right here is where the blade, which is the black one, that's the scoring, this one actually cuts. So I'm just going to line this up. So I don't want to go all the way to the corner. I want to leave some room. And then I'm going to also want a little bit of room here. So let me just show you on the first one. I know it's kind of hard to actually verbally explain. So I've got some room here, and then of course I want room here. So we're only going to cut a little bit. And again, no two are the same. So I'm leaving room at the corner, and I'm leaving room here. And I'm going to slice. This is the piece that we're actually going to use to put on the card. So this is the panel that we're going to be placing at the top. Do you see it here? All right, so I'm going to put that aside. So I'm going to leave a little room here. I'm going to bring this a little bit closer to my corner. So now I'm going to cut. You can see this is the depth of the opening now for the stamping. Let me show you again. You can see that that's going to be now this. So a little bit different than my first one, but that's okay. And then this is going to be the bottom panel of the card. So these were the 3 pieces we ended up getting, right? These are the leftovers. Here is the card base, and as I told you, these are the 2 panels that we're actually going to attach, and this is actually the visible opening of the card. So if you want and you feel more comfortable, you can go ahead and use a pencil for this, but you can see that I'm actually lining this up. So I'm lining up the cut here and here. I'm going to make little light pencil marks here, just so that I know the margin of my opening. Those will be easily erased. One thing about a mechanical pencil, I found that the erasers on here are really awesome, especially this one. This is a Bic. Those are my favorites. All right, so I don't know if you can see that really well. It's really, really light, but I've got an idea of where I need to stamp. I'm using the Oh So Eclectic stamp set. Really like this. You know, you may look at it and think, I don't get these pieces, but they create beautiful watercolor overlays to these images, which I'm going to show you. In addition, it has coordinating framelits that actually cut out some of those images, and it also does other things. I actually made this for you to show you, is a template of some of the other dies that are in there, and you can see they leave open filigrees. And these, which are going to be really hard to see, do you see those? These are actually embossed dies. So these framelits will actually leave an embedded image into your cardstock. Really pretty and really different. This I've actually done a video on before on how I used it to make a custom mask, but it'll also make a great cutout very similar to these. So great, great bundle. Make sure that you buy in a bundle too, then you'll be able to save 10% on getting both. I'm going to start by stamping inside this panel. And I am grabbing my Daffodil Delight ink pad, and that's what I'm going to be using to do that outline flower image. And I've got my flower mounted from that stamp set. And I'm not going to worry about it if it, like, you know, goes over those lines. I just want to make sure that I've got some image inside that lined area. And you can see I'm varying it just slightly. All right, so now I've got it cascading downside those pencil marks. Next, I'm using So Saffron ink, and actually using this one with that real funky watercolor image to go over these so I don't have to color them in. Now, I've been asked this a bunch of times. How do you know which way it goes? Well, you know what? You can fuss and figure it out, but you know what? It's not worth it. So you can kind of turn it like I'm doing to kind of see which way you like it better. But honestly, I'm really after a whimsical look. So I'm just going to kind of fill them in and just kind of go for it. Not really worried about it. All right, so now we've got those colored in for us. I'm going to work in some blue. I'm using Soft Sky, and I'm going to be using the outline image, which are these little dots that are inside that stamp set. It doesn't seem like much, but that's going to bring together the colors of my panel for my card. I think my ink pad's a little off camera there, and you can see I'm still trying to concentrate inside that frame, those pencil marks that I made. And if I'm a little outside, that's okay too. All right, so now we've got some blue there. And this is where I'm actually going to use the sister image to that one. This one's a solid dot, so I'm going to ink that one up. And I'm not even worried that I'm going to get these on there just right. These are actually designed to be the center of the flowers if you want to use them like that. But I decided, you know what, that would make kind of a fun little background. So I've just done a little bit of that here just to add a little bit of color to the base of this card. What I want to do is I want to grab what's going to be the lower panel of my card. And I'm going to use my basic gray ink, and I'm going to stamp a sentiment. This is from that same stamp set. This one says, "You're just lovely." So I'm going to stamp that all the way here near the bottom and do my very best to get it straight. All right, so now the components of these layers are finished, but now let's work on the decorations. I've got a scrap piece of Whisper White cardstock here. I'm going to pretty much do the same thing. I probably should have done this all at the same time, shouldn't I have? All right, so here's my daffodil again. So I've got my flower. Switching over to the saffron one more time. And here is my watercolor. Again, I'm not really worried about this because there's a die that's going to cut this out. I'm also going to use some Pear Pizzazz because I want to stamp some leaves. This stamp set actually has two different leaf images. There's one that's a crosshatch and one that's solid. And you're going to notice that they're very watercolored look, just to kind of lend credence to that whole stamp set. All right, so I'm going to ink those up here. I'm going to stamp 3, 1, 2, and 3. I've brought in my Big Shot. This is the magnetic platform, and I've got a clear plate for the bottom, and I'm going to do some die cutting on these so that we don't have to fussy cut them. It's the beauty of having the bundle. I've got the framelit for the flower, and you're going to notice here that there's an indentation in the die. Do you see it right here? And you're going to see there's an indentation in the stamp. That's how you know where it goes. That little cheater mark was really, really helpful for me. And then there's a die for the leaves. And the one thing I like about this framelit set is it cuts right on the stamped line. You're going to have very, very little white cardstock in between. Boy, I got those close. Let's see if that's going to work. Put those over the top. I should have left room between the images for the depth of the framelit, but I think it's going to work. All right, so we're going to crank those through. I'm going to bring that over back here to the front. So now we've got our flower, and then we've got our leaf. Yep, really nice. Now I'm going to repeat this process with the other two. Here we are with the base pieces of our card. I've got all the die cut images done. And now I've cut myself 2 strips of Marina Mist cardstock. And this is where I'm actually going to border these just to bring out those panels just a little bit. So I'm going to bring in my silicone mat, which is one of my most beloved little accessories in my stamp room. The reason is that adhesive will not stick to this, whereas it would, of course, to my work surface, which is paper. So whenever I'm doing something that's going to be just a shallow amount of adhesive, it would end up all here and give me a sticky mess. So I cut these much longer than I needed so that I can trim them where I want. So I'm going to add a little bit along the edge. And you can see anything that falls here won't gum up my work surface. It's going to be right here on the edge of the paper. I'm taking that strip, and I want a very narrow strip, because obviously if I make it too wide, that's going to impede on that opening on the front of the card. So here we go. I'm going to lay that down and then I'm going to press. Let me do the other one and then we'll trim. And just make sure you've got this going the right way. This is now going to be the top panel. So now I'm going to flip it and I'm going to put my adhesive along the edge here as well, just like I did with the last one. I'm grabbing that Marina Mist strip and I'm gauging to try to get the exact same amount of depth as I did on the first one I just created. That looks pretty close. I'm just going to rub. All right, so now I have these. I'm going to grab my paper snips and I'm using this edge of the cardstock as my guide. And this is just going to be cut flush. So you don't have to have any overage right there. So I'm going to cut that. And I'm going to do the same thing now on this side. I'm going to cut that away. And the same thing here. So using that paper edge as a guide to make it nice and straight. That's just a great way of cheating, isn't it? Just a real good tip for you when you're cutting. All right, so I'm going to set those all to the side. And move that so you can see a little bit better. Remember the base of our card? All right, this is where our panels go. And remember, depending on how wide you make this, it's actually going to impede on the center of your image. So that's actually going to get mounted here. I used these foam adhesive strips that are in the catalog. I absolutely love these for this type of card. It comes in a strip, so it's going to make it really easy for you to lay them on. So I'm going to pull off one. You can see they're nice and long and they can easily be cut with your scissors. I've got a little scrap there. I save all the scraps because sometimes I've got little tight corners to get them in and they come in handy. So I'm going to lay that here. I'm not going to go too close to the edge. I found that they're noticeable if you get too close to the edge. So I'm going to cut this here, make that a little bit shorter. And I'm fighting the sticky. And now I'm going to come inside and I'm going to do this edge here. Look, that's almost perfect. Here's where that little leftover is going to come in handy. And I'm going to come down here with the rest. I've got another short piece here. I'm going to lay that one here. So I like to use everything that comes inside the adhesive strips. I don't like to waste any of those little leftovers. So let me pull off another strip. And I'm going to fill this in. And you know what? You don't have to have it completely surrounded, but you want to make sure you have enough so that you can create that depth. So there we've got this one. And then here's the back side of the upper piece. You can see I cut that. I'm going to save that right on top of there. All right, I'm going to make sure these are burnished, which means I'm rubbing them down inside the paper to make sure they're good and stuck, because I'm going to take off the other side of paper backing to reveal the sticky. And I like to do that with my paper piercing tool. My fingernails are really short, and I find it difficult to get off the paper sometimes, so that's just another tip for you. Okay, so that's that piece. And now we're going to line this up directly over the top of the card front. We're not going to leave any space and just do the very best that you can. All right, so now we've got our first panel. Look, isn't that fun? Okay, here's that top panel. And we're going to do the same thing by taking off the adhesive strips. See, I thought this card looked a lot more difficult than it really is. All right, so now we've got this, and this is going to go right over the top. Now we've got our panels. Here comes the flower, and I've got my leaves. So there's the 3 leaves that we die cut. I'm actually going to mount the flower up in the corner, but I want to be careful that I'm going to get this in the envelope. You can show you, look, I cheated. I'm going to make a custom envelope for this one so it's a little bit bigger all the way around. So this is going to get tucked in on this card today. And I did want to use a little bit of dimensionals so that I can tuck my flower up underneath. So I'm going to place a dimensional on the outside of the opposite edges, here and here. Take off that paper backing. Those are a little bit bigger. If you have trouble getting those off, press in the center of the paper and then the ends will lift up for you, making it a lot easier. So I've got those going here. All right, and now I've got my leaves. There's 2 ways you can do this. You can use your silicone mat again, and you can place a little bit of adhesive on here because remember, it's not going to stick on your work surface. So that's way 1. So I'm just going to show you way 1. And then I'm going to tuck this underneath here. Okay, Okay, so that's way 1. And then I like a little dimension, so I come in and kind of just curl these up, even though they've got a little tape on them, so I've got a little lift there. I'm actually going to place this one now in the upper corner. So I'm going to need a couple glue dots. I'm going to put one here at the bottom. And I'm going to place another one here at the top. They're really sticky. And then I'm going to tuck this down inside. Yep, it looks like it's going to make the circumference of my card. All right, and then I can curl up my paper for some dimension. And then this last one, I kind of wanted cascading down. So I'm going to go back and add a little adhesive to this one using my silicone craft sheet. I really like this little gizmo. This thing's wonderful. And I'm going to tuck that up down underneath here. So now I've got a little bit of interest going on in my corner. Now a couple things to kind of gussy this up and bring some attention to the corner of the card. The first thing I did was I used Dazzling Diamonds glitter. When was the last time you broke this out? It seems like since the Clear Wink of Stella pen, we haven't used it very much. And I wanted to use it simply because I want to play up those glitter dots I'm going to put on here. So fine tip glue. You only need like a good splotch, and then just use the tip to move it around. And I'm working on the center of my flower. I'm going to work over my glitter container, and I've got a spoon. I love that. I do label them because I have different color glitters. Give it a good flick because you want what's statically on there to come off. So look, we've got a little pizzazz. Isn't that pretty? All right, so now we're going to do the glitter enamel dots. And here they are. You can see I've been a big fan of these already. I have several packages and I love them. Here's the one great thing. They graduate in color like an ombre. So they start off really, really light, and then they get darker to their darker hues. And they do come in the 4 shades, and these are reminiscent of the Color Theory designer paper. So we have Old Olive, the In Color Berry Burst. This is Crushed Curry, and this is Dapper Denim. Really pretty, but the one thing I really like about these really lighter ones over here, they're barely reminiscent of the shade. So they're almost white. Makes them really fun. So I'm going to add one up here, and I'm going to take another light one. This one's a little bit bigger, and I'm going to add that down here. I'm going to take a darker one here, and I'm going to lay that down here. So we've got a little cascading go here, and then I'm going to take a smaller one. And I kind of want to put it to create a visual effect. So I think what I'm going to do is I'm going to work over here. There we go. And you can use as few or as many as you'd like, but it just plays up that corner. So here's the one we just made together, and here's the one I made before you joined me. Can you see the spectrum opening is very different just depending on how you cut it? But you can't go wrong. It's a lot of fun for you to do some cutting and use those negative pieces you would normally throw away. I hope that you have enjoyed today's project. Remember to click on the I button here at the top of the page. It'll navigate you right to my blog post where you'll get pictures and cutting dimensions and supplies for today's project. I look forward to seeing you all next time. Have a great day.